Have you ever truly paused to ask yourself what it means for a man to walk through life alone, not because he's been left behind, but because he has chosen this path? In a world that relentlessly insists happiness must be found in romance, that fulfillment lies in companionship, and that solitude is something to be feared or pitied, there exists a different kind of man. This is the man who does not see solitude as a sentence, but as a sanctuary. He doesn't wander through life waiting for someone to complete him. He stands firm, whole in himself. In a culture that equates being alone with being broken, he redefines it as strength. While others chase validation, he seeks mastery of mind, of discipline, of emotion. Throughout history, the greatest thinkers, warriors and sages, men like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca and Epictetus, chose silence over noise, solitude over crowds, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. They knew what the world has forgotten, that freedom is born in self-reliance, that peace is found not in others, but in one's own soul. So no, this is not a rejection of love or companionship. This is not a cry against relationships. It's a call to stand on your own feet before you ever lean on another, to build a foundation of strength so solid that no loss, no loneliness, no rejection can shake it. If you've ever felt different for choosing independence, if you've questioned whether walking alone means missing out, or if you simply want to understand the power that lies in solitude, stay with me. Because today we're diving into 7 powerful truths about the man who chooses to face life alone, and why that man may be stronger, freer, and more at peace than the world dares to admit. 1. He embraces solitude as a source of strength. Most people fear being alone. They treat solitude like a shadow, something to run from, something to escape. They fill their calendars with appointments, their ears with noise, their lives with people, not because they're seeking connection, but because they're terrified of silence. But the man who walks alone by choice, he is different. He doesn't just tolerate solitude, he welcomes it. He doesn't sit in silence and grow restless. He sits in silence and grows stronger, because he understands what the world has forgotten, that solitude is not the absence of something, but the presence of everything that truly matters. In solitude, there are no masks to wear, no one to impress, no performance, no posturing, no pretending. It's just him and the raw, unfiltered truth of who he is. Most people avoid this. They fear what they'll find if they're left alone with their own thoughts. They keep themselves busy so they don't have to face the deeper questions. Who am I when no one's watching? What do I believe when the crowd goes quiet? What do I value when no one is influencing me? But this man, he chooses to face those questions. He walks into the silence, and instead of feeling lost, he finds clarity. Instead of feeling weak, he discovers his strength. Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor and one of the greatest Stoic minds, once wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." That quote isn't poetry, it's instruction. In a world of noise, the man who knows how to retreat inward becomes invincible. While others are distracted by likes, validation, and constant chatter, he is refining his thoughts, clarifying his purpose, and sharpening his mind like a blade. And here's something most people don't realize. True solitude isn't physical, it's mental. You can be alone in a cabin in the mountains and still be consumed by digital noise. Or you can be standing in the middle of a crowded city and feel a profound sense of inner quiet. The man who embraces solitude doesn't need to disappear from the world. He just chooses to disconnect from what doesn't serve him. He doesn't fear missing out because he knows what he's gaining: time to reflect, space to grow, the clarity to know who he is and what truly matters. And that clarity becomes his compass. He doesn't chase people. He doesn't fill his time with distractions. He doesn't jump into shallow relationships just to avoid being alone. Instead, he uses solitude the way warriors use a blade, carefully, intentionally. He meditates, he reads, he journals, he trains. He creates a world within himself so rich, so steady, that no external storm can shake it. And that's the paradox. The man who is most comfortable in solitude is also the man best prepared for the world, because he has faced his own shadows. He has conquered boredom, insecurity, and fear, not by escaping them, but by meeting them head-on. So when others run from silence, he runs toward it, because in that stillness he finds his edge, his wisdom, his peace. Solitude isn't loneliness. It's sacred. It's where a man sheds the expectations of the world and becomes who he truly is. And when he returns from that inner retreat, he is not fragile. He is focused. He is formidable. 2. He masters the art of self-sufficiency. There's a quiet kind of power in the man who needs no one. Not because he's closed off, not because he's bitter or heartless, but because he has learned, through time and challenge, to rely on no one but himself. In a world built on dependency, emotional, financial, even digital, the man who lives alone, without a girlfriend, is often seen as lacking. He's labeled as incomplete. People wonder what's wrong with him. But perhaps they're asking the wrong question. Instead of asking why he's alone, maybe we should be asking, what has he gained from choosing this path? Self-sufficiency is not just about doing your own laundry or cooking your own meals. It's about owning your life fully. It's about standing in front of the mirror and knowing, everything starts and ends with me. When there's no one to split bills with, you learn to manage money with precision. When there's no one to lean on emotionally, you become your own refuge. When no one reminds you of the little things, appointments, chores, responsibilities, you become sharp, aware, responsible, and self-led. At first it can feel overwhelming. There's no backup, no fallback plan, no, can you help me with this? But with each passing day, that discomfort gives birth to quiet competence. Fixing the sink, planning meals, navigating career moves. These tasks stop being stressful and become acts of personal pride, because no one is coming to save you. And when you embrace that, you stop waiting, you start building. This is not survival. This is mastery. The ancient Stoic Seneca said, "Who is content with the least is the richest, for contentment lies not in luxury, but in self-sufficiency." That quote cuts to the core of this truth. A man who learns to stand alone, who doesn't crave validation, who doesn't outsource his peace of mind, is truly rich. Not because he owns everything, but because he needs nothing. Think about how many people panic at the idea of being alone. They rush into relationships just to fill silence. They scroll endlessly just to avoid their own thoughts. But the man who lives alone, he doesn't run from silence. He walks straight into it and learns to hear what others are too afraid to face, the voice of his own mind. He learns to be both provider and protector for himself. He becomes the anchor in his own storm, not emotionally volatile, not financially unstable, but grounded in the one person he knows he can trust, himself. And here's the irony, the man who needs nothing is the one who is most prepared to give everything, because he gives from a place of strength, not lack. He enters relationships not because he's empty and desperate to be filled, but because he's full and ready to share. Self-sufficiency is not isolation, it's not coldness. It's the foundation of all great strength. And when a man has mastered that, he becomes unshakable. He may walk alone, but he never walks in weakness. 3. He experiences true freedom. In today's world, everyone talks about freedom, but very few men actually live it. They say they're free, yet they're chained to debt. They say they're independent, yet their mood swings with the emotions of their partner. They say they live life on their own terms, yet every decision is filtered through the fear of judgment, rejection, or social expectation. Freedom is not about doing whatever you want. It's about not being owned, not by circumstances, not by people, not even by your own impulses. And this is what the man who walks alone understands better than anyone. Because when you choose solitude, when you strip away the dependencies, the emotional obligations, the financial entanglements, you begin to taste something society rarely offers: pure, unfiltered autonomy. He doesn't ask permission to follow his path. He doesn't need to explain why he moved cities, changed careers, or didn't show up to that party. He doesn't spend money to impress. He doesn't compromise his goals for comfort or validation. He wakes up every day and knows, my time is mine, my energy is mine, my choices are mine. That is freedom. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once wrote, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." And the man who lives alone begins to see this truth clearly, without the silent pressure of relationship expenses, the constant spending on dates, gifts, vacations, compromises. He finds financial freedom, yes, but more importantly, he finds mental freedom. Because he's not trying to keep up with anyone. He's not living to meet expectations that were never truly his. He's not bound to the narrative that a man is only successful if he's married by 30, owns a house by 35, and posts family photos to prove his happiness. No, he defines success on his own terms, and that terrifies people. Because most people don't want freedom, they want safety wrapped in the illusion of control. But this man, he chooses the uncertainty of self-direction over the comfort of conformity. He knows that living free sometimes means walking alone. But he also knows that no one is coming to save him, and that's exactly what makes him powerful. He doesn't compromise his ambitions for approval. He doesn't shrink to fit into someone else's story. He's not burdened by the emotional volatility of a partner who hasn't done their inner work. He protects his time like a warrior guards a fortress, because he knows it's the one resource he can never get back. And in that space, in the silence, in the stillness, in the sovereignty, he builds. He builds his finances. He builds his health. He builds his craft. He builds the life he wants to live brick by brick, with no apologies. Some call it selfish, but that's because they don't understand that true freedom is not a rebellion. It's a responsibility. It's not about avoiding commitment. It's about refusing to be committed to things that compromise your truth. This kind of freedom doesn't come from rebellion. It comes from discipline, from clarity, from choosing every single day to stay true to yourself, even when the world tries to pull you in 1,000 directions. So while others are shackled by the invisible chains of societal obligation, this man walks light, walks focused, walks free, not because he has nothing to lose, but because he has already chosen what matters and let go of everything else. That is the power of a man who walks alone. That is what it means to be truly free. 4. He cultivates a deeper sense of purpose. Most people drift. They don't walk through life with direction. They float, carried by the current of routine, peer pressure, or the illusion of success sold to them by others. They wake, work, scroll, sleep, and call it living. They chase after relationships, parties, promotions, and purchases, not because they lead to meaning, but because they distract from the aching void of not knowing why they're here. But the man who walks alone, he cannot run from that question. He doesn't have noise to drown it out. He doesn't have constant companionship to numb the existential ache. And so in that silence, in that solitude, he confronts it. What am I here for? It is the most dangerous and powerful question a man can ask. And unlike the masses, he doesn't flinch. He leans in. He knows that without a girlfriend, without constant validation, without external distractions, life becomes a mirror. It shows him everything he is and everything he isn't. It reveals the gaps in his character, the buried dreams, the unfulfilled potential. And while that may be painful at first, it is also where purpose begins. Because when there is no one else around, there is only you. And what you choose to build with your time, your energy, your breath. The Stoic Epictetus once said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." This is not philosophy. This is a blueprint for men who want to live with intention. And the man who embraces solitude follows it to the letter. He doesn't ask the world who he should be. He decides, He defines what honor, strength, discipline, creativity, or peace means for him. And then he gets to work, every single day, shaping himself into that vision. This is the difference between existing and becoming. While others lose themselves in shallow romance or endless socializing, he goes inward. He reflects, he journals, he reads, he trains his body with discipline. He sharpens his mind like a weapon. He pours himself into a craft, a mission, a path, something that is bigger than ego, deeper than emotion, and more enduring than pleasure. He doesn't need someone else to give his life meaning, because he has done the hard work of creating meaning from within. Purpose is not something you stumble upon, it is something you carve with your bare hands. And solitude gives you the tools: time, focus, clarity, silence, the space to hear your own voice in a world constantly screaming at you to be someone else. And here's the paradox: the man who builds himself in solitude becomes the one people look to for guidance, the one who inspires not by preaching, but by living with purpose. He is not distracted, he is not aimless, he is not wasting his potential chasing fleeting pleasures. He wakes up with a mission, and that sense of mission bleeds into everything he touches: his work, his health, his discipline, his relationships. Purpose gives him armor in a world that thrives on emotional chaos. He is not swayed by trends, not weakened by rejection, not shaken by momentary setback. Because when a man has purpose, he becomes dangerously focused, and that focus is his power. So while others ask, "What should I do with my life?" he already knows, because solitude didn't break him, it refined him. And in the silence, he found not emptiness, the direction. 5. He develops emotional control and inner peace. There is a rare kind of strength in a man who does not let his emotions dictate the course of his life. He feels them. Yes, he is human after all, but unlike most, he does not obey them. He does not let anger drive his words. He does not let fear shape his choices. He does not let loneliness trick him into reaching for the wrong people. Why? Because he has learnt the ancient art of emotional discipline, not from books, not from therapy sessions, but from the crucible of solitude. You see, when a man lives alone without the comfort of a partner to reassure him, without someone always available to vent to, lean on, or distract him, he is forced to face his emotions raw. There's no buffer, no one to say it's okay when he's spiraling. There's just him and the storm within. And so he learns. He learns not to suppress but to observe, not to numb but to understand. He learns that emotions are like weather. They come, they go, and they are not permanent. He watches the rise of anxiety without letting it consume him. He feels the pull of anger, and instead of lashing out, he sits with it. He notices sadness creeping in, but he doesn't drown, he breathes through it. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is not just a quote. For the man who walks alone, it becomes law. Because when he masters his internal world, the external world loses its power over him. Let's be honest, most people aren't emotionally unstable because they're weak. They're unstable because they've never had to carry their own emotional weight. They lean too heavily on others to fix, to soothe, to validate. But what happens when those people disappear? They fall apart. Not this man. Heat doesn't rely on someone else to regulate his mood. He doesn't spiral when no one texts back. He doesn't need constant emotion. Instead, he builds tools: meditation, journaling, reflection, training. He sits in silence and names what he feels, without judgment. He doesn't shame himself for having emotions, but he never lets them run the show. And here lies his quiet, powerful peace. He is not emotionless, he is emotionally sovereign. You'll notice it when you meet him. He doesn't overreact. He speaks slowly. He pauses when provoked. He smiles without needing a reason, because his peace doesn't depend on the room, the mood, or the people in front of him. It comes from somewhere deeper within. This kind of control doesn't make him cold. It makes him trustworthy. Because a man who does not break under pressure, a man who doesn't lash out when challenged or collapse when rejected, is a man you can lean on. In a relationship, he doesn't lose himself. In adversity, he doesn't run. In silence, he doesn't crumble. He's built himself to withstand the highs and lows, not by chance, but by choice. Because in solitude, he's had to become the one person he could always count on. And now he carries that peace wherever he goes. Emotional control isn't about bottling things up. It's about having the wisdom to choose your response instead of reacting impulsively. It's about understanding that peace is your responsibility, not someone else's job to provide. The man who has learned to calm the storm within is the man who cannot be broken from the outside. He is the still lake in a world full of crashing waves, and that is the mark of a Stoic man. 6. He becomes a true Stoic, unshaken by external circumstances. There is a rare kind of man who walks through fire and never flinches, who watches the world around him fall into chaos and yet remains still. Not because he's numb, not because he's cold, but because he has cultivated something the modern world can neither understand nor shake: inner stability. This is the final gift of the man who chooses to walk alone. When you strip away the noise, the expectations, the relationships that once served as mirrors or masks, what you're left with is a man standing face to face with himself, and in that stillness, something ancient awakens. Stoic strength. You see, most people live in reaction. They react to bad news, to social pressure, to disappointment, to praise, to rejection. They are pulled in every direction by the emotions of others and the chaos of the world. Their peace is conditional, their self-worth fragile, their decisions easily swayed. But the man who lives alone has done the work. He's confronted the silence that most people run from. He's embraced the solitude most label as loneliness, and he's come out on the other side, not weaker, but unbreakable. Seneca once wrote, "A wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be." And this man lives those words not just in theory, but in action. He doesn't rage when life is unfair. He doesn't beg for certainty in a world built on change. He doesn't crumble when others leave, when plans fail, or when the future feels unclear. Why? Because he no longer seeks peace from the world. He brings peace into the world. He's not swayed by the latest trend. He's not wounded by insults. He doesn't puff up with praise or shrink from criticism. He moves like water, flowing where needed, still when required, but never losing form. He has learned, through solitude, that external circumstances are never fully in his control. But his mind, his mindset, his response, his values always are. So whether life offers him a crown or a cross, he stands the same, calm, focused, grounded. He doesn't obsess over outcomes because he's committed to process. He doesn't cling to people because he's anchored in principle. He doesn't live for pleasure but for purpose. And when adversity comes, as it always does, he does not break. He endures because this man has done what few ever will. He has conquered the hardest thing of all, himself. This is the ultimate Stoic path, not to be without emotion, but to master it. Not to avoid connection, but to transcend dependence. Not to deny struggle, but to rise above it. He becomes the eye of the storm in a world of chaos. The unshakable presence in a society built on noise and reaction. The steady flame in a time where most people flicker with the wind. And when others ask how he stays so calm, so disciplined, so unbothered by the storms of life, his answer is quiet but clear. Because I've already walked through the hardest fire, the one inside me, and I am no longer afraid. That is what it means to be truly Stoic, and that is what the man who chooses solitude becomes. Not less of a man, not a man left behind, but a man forged in silence, strong, free, complete. 7. He forms stronger and more meaningful connections. Here's one of life's quiet ironies: the man who is most comfortable being alone. He is also the man most capable of building the deepest, strongest connections. At first glance, society paints him as isolated. They whisper, "He's emotionally unavailable." They assume he's a lone wolf who refuses to love, or worse, can't be loved. But they're wrong, terribly wrong, because what they don't see is that solitude has given him something most people never find: clarity about who he is and who is truly worth letting in. See, most people build relationships from a place of fear. Fear of being alone, fear of being unloved, fear of silence. They jump from one connection to the next like stepping stones across emotional quicksand, hoping someone will make them feel whole. But the man who has mastered solitude doesn't enter relationships out of fear. He enters them from fullness. He doesn't need you, and that's exactly why he can love you purely, without attachment, without hidden expectation. Because here's the truth: neediness kills connection. Desperation repels authenticity. But when a man is whole on his own, every relationship becomes a choice, not a crutch. He doesn't chase, he doesn't beg, he doesn't force things to work when they clearly don't. Why? Because he knows solitude isn't a punishment, it's home, and he'll return to it in peace if the connection doesn't align with his values. Seneca once wrote, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." Simple, direct, stoic, and this man lives by it. He doesn't seek crowds, popularity, or meaningless interactions. He doesn't surround himself with people just to avoid his own company. He's already made peace with himself. So now he seeks depth. He values silence over small talk, shared purpose over shared hobbies, mutual growth over mutual distraction. His friendships are fewer but stronger. His romantic standards are higher, not because he's arrogant, but because he knows what peace costs. And he's not willing to trade it for chaos disguised as love. He's not impressed by beauty without character, not interested in attention without intention. He doesn't entertain surface-level energy. He's seen what solitude can offer, and if someone doesn't offer something greater, he walks away. But when he does connect, when he does find someone who matches his values, his depth, his calm, it is magnetic. It's powerful because there's no pressure to perform, no fear of abandonment, no manipulation, just two whole individuals choosing to walk beside each other, not because they need to, but because they want to. That's what makes his relationships rare. There's no codependency. There's no mask, just presence, just truth. In a world flooded with shallow attachments, he becomes a beacon of depth, integrity, and grounded presence. And people notice. They sense that he's not trying to impress, that he's not desperate to be liked, that he's free, and because of that, he's powerful. So no, the man who walks alone is not lonely. He's simply unwilling to settle. Because once you've built a life that feels whole without anyone in it, you stop letting just anyone into it. And that is how solitude becomes the gateway to the most meaningful connections a man can ever experience. So now you see the man who walks through life without a girlfriend, who chooses solitude over noise, depth over distraction, purpose over approval, is not broken. He is not incomplete. He is not missing out. He is rising above. He has mastered self-sufficiency, becoming his own provider, protector, and compass. He has embraced solitude not as exile, but as a sanctuary for thought, discipline, and clarity. He has developed emotional control, unshaken by moods, drama, or chaos. He has discovered true freedom, financially, mentally, spiritually. He has cultivated a sense of purpose that burns brighter than the fleeting pleasure of empty connection. He has formed deeper, more meaningful relationships because he no longer builds from need, but from strength. And above all, he has become a true Stoic, calm in the storm, grounded in principle, fearless in the face of life. This is not a rejection of love. This is a redefinition of strength, because until a man can stand fully on his own, in silence, in stillness, in solitude, he will never know who he truly is. He will never taste real freedom, and he will never love from wholeness, only from lack. So if you've ever felt different for choosing your own path, if you've ever been told you're falling behind because you walk alone, Remember this, you are not behind. You are ahead of everyone still running from themselves. And the man who walks alone, with clarity in his mind, peace in his heart, and purpose in his soul, that man isn't lonely. He is free. Is the most dangerous kind of man there is.